Have you ever wondered why you react stronger to certain things than others? Or have you ever been surprised about how other people react strange, or maybe seem to overreact in a situation? This video will help you understand why even strange reactions can make sense, looking from the point of view of how our brain reacts. Why is our brain built as it is? It is built to help us survive basic threats back in the old days, and it is more than 400,000 years old. So if we met a tiger, a normal response will be to either fight, flight, or freeze. In order to survive, there are many systems in the brain, but one of the most crucial ones we call SCARF. SCARF is a model that builds on more than 100 studies of brain research across nations and cultures. It provides us with a far more sophisticated understanding of what really drives behavior. SCARF stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, fairness, and the brain is monitoring these 5 elements all the time, mostly without us noticing it. But the elements have a tremendous impact on how we feel, how well we perform, and how motivated we are. You can either be in a positive state or in a negative state on each element. If you are in a negative state on one or more of the elements, it is impossible to stop and think because you are in a real code red survival mode. This means that you are experiencing a real danger response to one or more of these 5 elements, and then you can't take a moment to relax and think. And in the savannah, it can make you escape the tiger. But in the modern workplace, it's not beneficial because you become a less intelligent version of yourself. In other words, a negative or a positive state has a dramatic impact on your ability to do great work. As an employee in Systematic, it's important that we maximize our capacity to influence other people in a positive way, especially when we are welcoming new employees. So we need to know how to affect people in a good way by maximizing a positive reward response in the brain. At the same time, we want to make sure to avoid a feeling of being threatened by minimizing a danger response. Being in the maximized reward state is also known as engagement, and engaged people are of course much more happy and also far more productive than disengaged employees. Often leaders and organizations spend money and use other external rewards to motivate people. But as it turns out, there are often far more powerful ways to trigger the reward state. So if you want to be the best that you can be at helping and influencing others, you need to understand what makes people tick. Let's go through each of the elements in the SCARF model. I will use examples from a new employee's point of view. On each element, you can either have a real danger response or a reward response at any given moment. Status is the first element in the model. It's your perception of where you are in the hierarchy compared to other people. Science tells us that when you experience a drop in status, your brain network lights up in the same way as when you experience physical pain. We also know that when you experience an increase in status, it activates a reward response similar to the one you get when you receive a monetary reward, but the reward is even bigger with an increase in status. Status is an extremely important driver of behavior. When you give new employees feedback, they might argue because it is a threat to their status. Maybe you remember the feeling of somebody coming up and asking you, would you like some feedback? It can easily create a danger response in the brain. And when an employee is new and maybe more sensitive, getting negative feedback can easily create a danger response in the brain as if their life was threatened. It can be even more difficult to receive negative feedback because you don't know what your new colleagues think of you yet. However, you do know that you are supposed to be open and willing to learn. But when you don't know the people you receive feedback from, it can be more difficult to show if you get overwhelmed, worried, or upset, which can easily happen when your status is lowered. One way to get around this is allowing for people to give feedback to themselves and tell you what they think. Then you can be more sensitive to their way of thinking and also better understand what makes sense to them, which can make it easier to discuss ways to improve the work. In this situation, their status is actually going up when you ask them what they think, and they get a reward response rather than a danger response. The second element in the SCARF model is certainty. We know from studies that uncertainty of any kind and not knowing what will happen generates a danger response. The brain is a certainty creating machine, always trying to predict what will happen next, and this ability has helped us survive for thousands of years. When we create clarity of what is going to happen and what we expect of people, it provides far more certainty to our brain. But when you are a new employee, you don't know anything about what role you will have in your team, what processes you will have to follow, how the culture will create meaning to what is good or bad, and how you can get help. You don't know how you will perform yet, or how you will learn things that you need to know in order to do your job well. All this will create a lot of danger responses over a long period of time. The third element in the SCARF model is autonomy. We know from brain studies that when people experience a stressor and they feel that they have no control, no choice, no autonomy, the stress level automatically increases. On the other hand, we know that when you are in a stressful situation and you do find some degree of control, choice, or autonomy, the level of stress decreases dramatically. But when you are a new employee at Systematic and don't know what you don't know, it can be extremely difficult to choose between all the different choices and possibilities you might have, both when solving a task, when navigating in processes, and in acting in our culture in general. So it can create a danger response to have too much autonomy in the beginning, because it can affect the certainty element negatively. The fourth element in the SCARF model is relatedness. We know that when you meet new people, your brain detects an automatic threat. It doesn't matter if you go to a party or you begin as a new employee here. When you don't know anybody, you feel uncomfortable until you have been introduced to people. Then your stress levels decreases dramatically. It can be as simple as a conversation that makes the difference. In that moment, we generate what is called an oxytocin response. This kind of bonding puts other people in a like us group rather than a not like us group. This is very important since it generates the perception of friend versus foe. And it has a lot of implications, especially for new employees who need to feel part of a team. It's important to actively create bonding experiences to create common ground. Otherwise, people may automatically feel or be in that faux state of thinking where other people are outside the group. New employees may easily feel forgotten, excluded, or not important. This makes it harder to get reward responses in the brain when working together. The fifth and final element is fairness. Science is very clear here. A fair exchange activates the reward response, and an unfair exchange activates a danger response. As a new employee, you don't have the whole picture yet, and therefore it's difficult to see if you or others are being treated fairly. Again, this easily creates a danger response in the brain. When you as a new employee feel a danger on one element, several elements, or maybe on all 5 elements in the SCARF model, your brain is actually not working as normally. It'll become extremely difficult to think. So let's look at what we want to aim for here. Please think about, what is it like when you work with someone who shows you what is great about yourself, provides really clear expectations, and tells you what will happen next. Lets you make decisions. Really trusts you, and there is a good connection between you. And finally, you know that they will always treat you with respect. You practically want to marry them. So when a leader, a tutor, or others treat you in this way, they basically know what makes you tick. And by doing so, they literally make other people smarter and more effective, engaged, and more productive in the workplace. So now, with this in mind, what will you do differently tomorrow?